I will tell you, a lot of it is luck. I think a lot of people in tech conflate skill with luck. I've had people telling me take more risk now. And I'm 26 years old. I would tell my younger self even now to take more risk. Getting out survival mode is super important, and I think a career in tech can absolutely help you do that. And you can sort of design your life the way you want. At the end, sometimes we have to say, like, I'm going to make this decision for me. I'm going to take this risk for me. I'm going to go ahead and jump at this. I made a decision and I signed up for the boot camp, and I haven't looked back since.
In today's episode, we have Jerome, who is a product consultant at Paradigm and an alumni of Grand Circus, which is a coding bootcamp. Welcome to the show, Jerome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I mentioned that you were a product consultant at the beginning of the show. Like, what is a product consultant, and what do you actually do?
Yeah, for sure. So as a product consultant, I'm embedded into a software development team, agile development team, and really create requirements for software developers. At the same time, I prioritize those requirements and also aid them in working on those requirements. So a lot of times, a software developer may need to know what they want to work on, but a lot of times they need to be blocked by some other requirement, or making sure that the front end tasks are done for the back end tasks are done for the front end tasks, sort of thing. So really working with software developers, but at the same time working on a cross-functional team with people from the business, with people work for people from marketing, people from sales. But really right now it's people from the leadership of the product team that sort of have a vision for the product. And our main goal is to create $1 billion of incremental value for our company that bought our company. So I was building first source, acquired my company Paradigm. That's essentially an acquisition to develop a strategy to continue what they're doing. So BFS is one of the biggest providers of building or equipment or products in the country. So yeah.
Yeah, but it sounds like your knowledge of coding and what's possible, or what's the best way to do things, or what are good ways to do things, are still very important for you to be able to do your job. And speaking of coding, you actually discovered your interest in coding pretty early on. Like, I think almost 2 decades ago, when your mom first bought an iMac. Tell us more about that experience, about how you first got interested in coding.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was like '05, and my mom was going back to school. She had previously moved to Milwaukee from Chicago. It was in healthcare administration, and we're working sort of as a scheduler on the front desk sort of jobs in hospitals, but realized that she wanted to go back to school and get her degree in it. So we went to the Apple store, and she spent all this money on our own brand new iMac. And I remember we got the iMac, and there was just so much into it natively, so we could make web pages. And I discovered this thing called HTML. At the time, I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." Didn't really know to the extent of how powerful it was, but definitely, hit a spark. Sort of the design of the iMac, and Steve Jobs became one of my heroes early on too. So it was definitely an exciting time. And it became full circle sort of when I continued on and became entrepreneurial. When I sort of figured out that software was eating the world, and every company in the world was going to be a technology company, I was like, okay, yeah, this is something I can stick with and try to create a career out of. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people get into coding or get into tech because they are entrepreneurial and see the writing on the wall, see that this is coming, and they can either get on board or kind of get left behind.
Yeah.
So it sounded like you always had this ability to look for where the opportunities are. You actually mentioned to us that you were very much an entrepreneur as a kid. You're selling lemonade and soda at the park. Tell us more about this entrepreneurial mindset and how it's been helpful in this career path.
Sure. Yeah. From your young age, just always just the go getter, outside. And for me, it was like I was either outside riding my bike, hanging out with friends, or I could find a way to make $1 and go to the corner store and buy myself stuff. I wasn't always asking my mom for money or anything like that, but it would snow, and I'd say, hey, I could probably go make some money, leave the fall in the fall, and I would say, or throw break some leaves and make some money and go and buy some snacks. So it was really always something that was in me. And then down the street, we grew up in the Washington Heights neighborhood of Milwaukee, and there was a sign shop down the street. And then I was like, I want to sell lemonade. I was like, let me just walk up to the sign shop owner and see if he'll make some signs. He was just making yard signs. It was like 50 cents down the street. And I think early on, I was able to learn really how to sell. If it was selling lemonade, or if it was selling Boy Scout popcorn, or I went to a Catholic school, and annually in the fall we would do a magazine sale. And it was the fact that I would go door to door and ask people if they wanted to buy magazines. And I didn't know at the time, but it was really helping me, gain confidence of selling. And a lot of whether it's being a product, whether it's being a software developer, a lot of what you're doing inside of a company is selling, your ideas, and really being influential on what you can do and what needs to happen, what decisions need to be made at different times. So yeah.
Yeah. So you were interested in coding, but you didn't get into it right away, or I guess the more traditional path. You mentioned you had to work several hourly jobs before enrolling in a boot camp, including internships, part-time jobs during college. You worked in an e-commerce startup. Tell us more about what that experience was like working these kind of jobs that obviously fulfilled their purpose, wasn't necessarily what you wanted to ultimately do. And how did that motivate you to get into a boot camp and to move more towards a technical career path?
It really wasn't until like high school when I reached out to someone cold on LinkedIn, and I was, I had no family connections, no one in my family knew what a startup was, so I was just reaching out to people cold on LinkedIn. It's like, hey, I see you took this educational path. The one person that I did end up being my mentor, but I was like, hey, I see you took this educational path. I think it's going to be one that I take as well too. Like, would you be willing to give advice? So I reached out to that person, but I also reached out to a doctor who, funny enough, never got back to me. So I was like, all right, I guess I won't be a doctor. I guess I'll get into the business world and see what that's about. So yeah, this person that I reached out to and who eventually ended up becoming my mentor was working at the family companies that was Quicken Loans in Detroit at the time, and they were happy to talk to me, to tell me about what they did, and they actually pursued a degree in accounting. And I was like, I'm actually going to go out and I'm going to be an accountant. So my freshman year comes around, and I end up at the school that they ended up going to. And that summer, or my summer of my freshman year, I applied and got a internship at Quicken Loans. And Quicken Loans was at the time the largest mortgage loan provider in the country. This person had introduced me to the recruitment manager at Grand Circus, and at the time I didn't know what boot camps were, or I was still at the point of like, I mean, I liked HTML when I was a kid, but I don't even know if coding is for me. So what this person did is they invited me to a workshop. So it was like a 7 a.m. front end development workshop where build a website, build a front end for a website. I was like, oh, right. And I showed up there. It's still a bit nervous, but there was a teacher that was pretty friendly. There was other people in the classroom. I was like, wow, like, this is fun. This is something that I can do. And until you try it, you'll never know if you're good or bad at it. But I think one of the main sentiments for me was that, you have to remain hungry, right? So I was hungry to learn, hungry to roll my sleeves up and let's see if I would be good at this. So after that workshop, I was like, this actually isn't bad. Let me continue to do this. And I continued to practice and try tutorials on YouTube and elsewhere online. There's just so many platforms now where you can learn. And I did that up until the point where I graduated from college. And in between, I continued to work hourly jobs and also worked in startups, just not in technical roles. So I had roles in sales, I had roles in business development. But I also tried things outside of what one would call the tech world. So started working at a few financial companies, a few credit unions as well too. But really was always coming back to being hungry for wearing the many hats. I think at one point it clicked that I was working for a company in Madison, and I was in sales, but I really didn't understand the product as much as I had wanted to. So I was selling this thing that I really didn't understand. And I was like, you know what? It'd be so much nicer if I was closer to the product, if I was able to understand things more. So the next summer, it was like this summer of the pandemic. It was the summer that I was graduating. And I was like, you know what? I think the cost of failure is much more than the cost of regret. So if there's anything that you want to do, I'd say go for it. Failure is like, you have to really drop your ego at the end of the day. Who's watching you? No one. And if they are watching you, if they have something to say, then we're probably not doing anything themselves. So at the end, sometimes we have to say, like, I'm going to make this decision for me. I'm going to take this risk for me. I'm going to go ahead and jump at this. I made a decision and I signed up for the boot camp, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, that's amazing that you kind of land in this path. You kind of had a start and then a pause in your technical journey. Then you came back to it. And what was interesting to me was that you were curious and you thankfully discovered this path because you put yourself out there. But when I was growing up, the same thing. I grew up with an immigrant family, grew up in a blue collar town. I didn't know what some of these jobs were that existed. I had no one in my
Sure.
family that worked these jobs. So for someone that's like you, where you sounds like you're the kind of first person in your generation to work in tech, to work at startup, it's tough to even know that this is a possibility. How do you recommend people that have this inkling of an interest, just like you had, but just have no network, have no family that is even remotely working in the industries or in the jobs that they're interested in?
Sure. And I do want to get back to something that you said previously. I will tell you a lot of it is luck. I think a lot of people in tech conflate, skill with luck, like a lot of the positions you fall into, I mean, of course, there are those people who are sort of destined to fall into some of these roles, go to Silicon Valley and do these things. But tech is so much bigger than what a lot of people know. I think when I got to Detroit in the summer of 2017, I saw them taking what was a huge company that was sort of all over the country, centralizing it, bringing it down to downtown Detroit, where they were going to give people mortgage loans over the phone through an app. Like that's strong from the one process to bringing it online. But to bring it back to your question, I mean, it's really, about being genuine, about making sure that you're connecting with the right people. And really, it's like, is there an industry that you're passionate about? I really like financial technology. I came from a background where growing up, we didn't have a ton of money. Really, it was just like we were figuring out as we went. And I had a passion for helping people with their money, whether it was, buying their first house, or you're saving for a car, or just managing their money in their accounts. It's really about, find something that you really enjoy, find something that you're passionate about. Finances, I'm passionate about, even though I'm still not there. I think that's really the gateway to finding some luck, but also finding out what you really like within the tech world. So it's really about, genuinely reaching out to people, and you can't be afraid to send that email cold. If it's not genuine, though, I don't think it's not going to be as sticky. But if it's genuine, you're reaching out to people that are working in the industry, reaching out to people that have been alumni of the school that you went to, or you're reaching out to people that have generally taken a path that you want to take. I think if you do that, you'll ultimately find someone that wants to help you out. And it only takes one person to reach back out to you and say, like, "Hey, here's what I did. I'm rooting for you," and that really easily gives you the momentum and energy to say, like, "Hey, yeah, I'm confident in my ability to be able to do this." So
Yeah, and while you were doing this, you mentioned you're doing these hourly jobs, and I think a lot of times when you are working a job that you don't see as a long-term career, you kind of get bogged down, or you almost start to feel like this is like your kind of lot in life, and like it's not going to change, especially when it's multiple jobs. It's kind of easy to get stuck in like not just kind of be focused on survival rather than like how do I build a career out of this. Was this ever a concern for you that man, I might get stuck doing this, and why didn't you get stuck?
for sure, I think it's definitely hard. I'll give you an example. A lot of people in my cohort, they like quit their jobs to come to boot camp. For me, I did the boot camp, which was a 9 to 5 full-time thing, but I also found a way to continue my job. So for me, it was always just about, I knew sort of where I was going, and I think that's why defining your why is super important. Like, why do you want to do this? And for some people, the why is money. And if the why is money, then you better really like money a lot. It's got to be hard for you to continue to like money. So I think, defining a why that's not just money, but defining a why is like, are you generally like helping people? Are you generally like contributing to technology that's going to solve someone's life or solve a problem that is going to affect a lot of people? As long as you can meet people and continue to develop those skills of working with people, at the end of the day, any organization you join, any job you have in tech, you're gonna have to work with people. So for me, it's always been about knowing that there's a why, there's a mission that I have also. And as long as that I can continue to gain skills, continue to put these tools on my tool belt. So I think defining the why and continuing to work hard and figuring that out, but also making sure that you're developing yourself and developing the skills needed to work within these organizations are important to you. And that means that nothing is below you, right? Nothing, no conversation, no task. If you do need to sell, then you need those skills. So in a startup, you get pretty scrappy. I'm in a larger company now, but you need to be able to sell. You need to be able, maybe you need to be able to develop. And I've really been developing myself to be that person who starts a company. And when you start a company, no job is below you. So
Yeah, I really like that thinking that nothing is beneath you. And the way it works out is that the people that have that kind of attitude that nothing is beneath them is the ones that progress the most because they always have their sights out for these opportunities. Because a lot of people might be thinking about going to boot camp, but they might not be able to afford it. And they end up never going to the boot camp.
right.
So for you, when you mentioned some people quit their job and kind of dove into the boot camp, you balance both a part-time job, a part-time operations job with the boot camp. And this sounds like a lot because the boot camps are usually an intensive program where you're in there like a full time, 8 hours in the classroom. There's homework, there's studying to do after that, but you're also working a job. Tell us more about how you're able to kind of get through this period.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm extremely grateful because the company that I was working for was ultimately a company that I got my first job from. And really, operations role was flexible. So it was for something called Eat Street, sort of like a competitor to Uber Eats or DoorDash. And the operations role was really supervising drivers and making sure that orders got from one place to another. There's like a three-pronged business, right? There's the driver involved, there's the merchant involved, and then there's like us where they order the food involved. And sometimes those all need to work together in order to get to for you to get your food. So if you ever order food, definitely be thankful for your driver and for the people who built your application. So really, it was a lot of sacrifice. That summer was also the summer where Milwaukee Bucks, my hometown team, won the championship, and it was either I decided to work some hours at night. It was like the boot camp was like 9 to 5. I worked from like 5 to 10 every day, 7 days a week, or I decided to go and hang out. And for me, my why was more important. Where I wanted to go, be gaining those skills to get software developer, but also still being able to learn the operations of this three-pronged business, being able to know the problems, being able to know how merchants worked when a driver got there, being able to know how our app worked when too many people got on it, or too many people ordering from one place at the same time, or a market was shut down because of a severe thunderstorm or protest or something like that. And being able to know those ins and outs of this business really was the catalyst that helped me get promoted into the product analyst role there after my recamp. So, really the sacrifice is sometimes what turns into the reward. And that's exactly what happened in this situation.
So I think another example of this is that you went to a coding boot camp. I think a lot of people would say, I'm going to go into a boot camp, I'm going to come out as a software engineer, and they have their kind of sights set on that. But it's good to know that there are other options out there. Like you mentioned, your product consultant, which sounds like a very technical product management kind of role. How did the boot camp help you with this job? How does that work?
Yeah, if nothing else, I think it really grew my confidence in myself, my ability to speak to technical people and also do the work more than ever. So first of all, you learn how to code, you learn how to build the front end of a website, build the back end of a website, how to deploy it. So as someone who is entrepreneurial, I was like, man, now I'm ready to write software and start a company. That's still not off the table, but at the same time, when you need something more stable and you're a young person who also wants a career, but it allows you to talk to technical people in a better way. It also allows you to work and embed yourself into these agile software development teams and be able to work with confidence. How to split the front end and the back end. You know what an API is. You know what Azure, AWS is. You really know these concepts that are probably pretty frightening if you're just someone coming out of college and you want to get a job on a product team or on a tech team. All of this is software. So these things are going to give you the leg up to say, it may not give you the leg up in the way that you think they're like, oh, I have to know how to do these things. But you being able to talk about these things, you being knowledgeable of these things, gives you a leg up in the interview, in the job, and allows you to really work faster and learn faster. Because you know much more than maybe someone who does not know these things that does. So it really helped me out, not only in being that confidence, but also knowing that I can kind of write my own ticket now if I have ideas and I'm working on projects that really can become a company. So
Yeah, so you've always had different jobs and different things going on. So I feel like at least I don't know of a clear boundary between all your different jobs. But can you describe the moment where you felt like I've successfully transitioned into tech, where this goal you had in mind, at least this particular milestone, you feel like you've reached it?
for sure, and it's a really good question. I think the biggest thing was when I got that job after boot camp at Each Street. When I was really going from this sort of operations role, working on the business, or an hourly job, so being back in sprints. And I remember when we were at Boost, we were working sprints, and it would be this plan of like, yeah, we want to execute on these features in this amount of time, and we're going to do this by X date. So that's really what tech is about, and that's really what working in agile is about. And some companies may do it differently. A lot of companies do product differently, but when I first landed that job after boot camp, I was like, all right, this is a foundation for me. I didn't say, oh, I made it. I think there's a lot more to go for me. And I'm always, trying to push myself for more. But that was when it was like, all right, I've got this full-time job in tech at a software company, at a homegrown software company out of the Midwest. Just something I really enjoyed, something I liked. And that was the moment that I was finally a little bit happy. Came out of the middle of a pandemic. I was like, all right, I got a job. Sort of, I don't have too many worries anymore. So that was definitely fulfilling for me.
Yeah, so you mentioned to us before about your income potentially increasing 7 to 10 times after transitioning into tech. What was the feeling like when you got the, let's say, the offer letter when you're officially, working in tech?
It was incredible. I think as you mentioned, you're working these hourly jobs, you're working these jobs that are sort of demanding. Where it's just like you're in survival mode, right? You're like, no, I have to work X amount of hours to live the lifestyle that I'm living. And you sort of split your time up. All your time is sort of thought about as like a dollar value. Once you really do that survival mode, you get this compelling view of like, wow, what can I do now? You can start working on a side project that may develop into a company, and you can start breathing in. I think you can work harder as well when you're not in survival mode, and you have to like penny pinch and do all these different things that just like are always about money. I think once your mind is outside of money, you can really start thinking about other problems and problems that we can solve for the rest of the world. So I think getting out of survival mode is super important, and I think a career in tech can absolutely help you do that. And you can sort of design your life the way you want. When I got my job at Eat Street in operations, I was working remote. And that was something that's now pretty high on my list. I work remote now, and I've really gotten comfortable working remote, but also working with people in a remote environment. It's my first time also working with people from across the world, so contractors from the other side of the world. So being able to do that is also something that I've gotten accustomed to, gotten used to. And it's been an opportunity gotten from working at these technology companies. So I think being able to work with people all over the world, being able to work with and have a team, also being able to sort of write your own ticket, and then being out of survival mode is probably the most important thing that you can do sort of in any career. Like getting out of that mode, getting out of that sort of like there's those instincts of like, oh, well, I just have to survive. Breaking past that barrier is pretty huge.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing where when you think back, there was a time in your life where you were constantly thinking about money, everything from grocery shopping to the restaurant menus. Like you always these calculations in your head whether you can
Mm,
afford this or how much you have to work to
yeah.
pay for these things. And then one day, like that thought kind of, I don't think it ever goes away unless you win the lottery or something. But it definitely is much quieter than before. And you kind of talk about this like freedom that
Mhm.
has come from working in tech. And obviously the monetary aspects, there's freedom afforded there. Are there other kind of, I guess, freedoms that you've not experienced because of your transition into the tech industry?
For sure. I think I'm really happy with the things that I'm working at. But I really say, defining your why and finding, your passion. I can't stress that enough. If you find those things that you like to work on, when you show up to work, when you show up to the meeting, you really feel like you're not at work. Like I really like the things that I'm working on. I know so many people stress that, like, they think that their life is defined by their college major, their life is defined by a job that they've been in for X amount of time. It's really not that anymore. I think a lot of the same principles that I work around are the same when I travel from company to company, but the problem for change when you're able to sort of work on the things you're working on, get paid at a fair or even more than a fair amount, and you're able to think freely and really be creative in your outside of work. I think it's super important. I've been lucky to be able to do that. So, for instance, I may work sort of my 9 to 5 job and enjoy that. And then I'm like, oh well, that's an interesting problem. Let's see what we can do with code at night to sort of solve that problem, or let's see what we can be creative about in the world to solve problems just around you. I think working in tech can sort of become sort of a problem solver of sorts of like, well, there's a problem. I'm a problem solver at work. Why can't I be a problem solver the rest of my time outside of work? So when you develop these skills, just get an eye for what else you can do. And for me at least, I wanted to take that further, and that's sort of a lot of what the projects that I work on outside of work are. So yeah, and it's still fun and enjoyable. It doesn't feel like work at all outside of that too. So yeah.
You said that anyone can do this when it comes to entering the tech industry. So if you could go back and give advice to your younger self, maybe when you hadn't seen the entire path yet and you're just starting this journey, like what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, I've had people telling me to take more risks now. And I'm 26 years old. I would tell my younger self even now to take more risks, right? If you can early on get some skills that can allow you to build something that's not just eliminate sand, but some kind of website that solves a problem for more people in the world, being able to do that early on is going to be super powerful. And I think we're seeing that a lot with a lot of the tools that are coming out to be able to help people code and learn how to code. But even going to a coding bootcamp, had I gone to that workshop earlier, I would have done it, and I would have figured out that if I learned these skills, I'd be valuable to the world. So I'd say, take risks earlier, define your why in life, and try a lot of things. I tried a lot of jobs early on. I tried a lot of jobs in different fields, whether it's retail clothing or retail food. Trying things and getting out of your comfort zone is super important, but also, take risks reaching out to people that seem bigger than you in stature, or socioeconomically. These people at the end of the day are just people. They do the same things that you and I do. They laugh just like you and I do. They just, you know, gotten lucky. Some of them, sure, skill, but a lot of them have gotten lucky, played their cards right, and you can do the same thing too. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's easy to try to identify the differences between you and someone else, but there's way more similarities, I think, that I've
Right.
found. So I leave this last question though, as someone that's been on this journey where you kind of hustled and grinded your way all the way to where you're at now, what do you think are some of the most common misconceptions about this path of self-learning and going through this non-traditional path of working these hourly jobs to eventually break into the industry? Like, what are some things that maybe people have come up to you or spoken to you about that they have misconceptions about this journey that you kind of try to clear the air about?
Yeah, the first thing is I think people think that they need to be geniuses to learn how to code. It's all about the time invested. But if you do anything for an hour a day for a year, you're gonna be good at it. If that's learning a language, if that's learning how to code. It's just like you don't need to be a genius to do this. It's really investing in time and not kidding yourself. Taking it serious. I think another thing is that they might say like, well, it's not for me, it's for someone else who is maybe smarter than me. It's like, no, I think, if you're capable, it's just that you have to really want it. And I think really defining, that's why it comes back to defining your why. And again, I think a big part of it is people think that, oh, I'm going to get into tech and I'm going to make a lot of money. And like I said, money is one part of it, but you better like money a lot because I think it's fun and I like doing it, but it's also a lot of these things are really hard, but hard things are fun. I think if you can get the perception of out of your head hard things that just going to be really hard all the time. When you get a group of people working on the hard things together with you, you really are able to enjoy it. I think back to one of the things that my mentors told me early on, and I don't know if you can swear on this, if so bleep it out, but he told me not to work for assholes. That was one of the things that my mentor told me early on. And as long as you can find people to work with on a problem that you care about, that really sort of allows you to work on your why or represent your why or work toward your why. I think that's when you can really hit a sweet spot and you feel like you're in a groove. That's really where I feel like I am in my career now. I found something, I really like technology, really like solving problems for people. I'm passionate about doing that on behalf of other people and making sure that it's on a large enough scale. And then I really like what I'm doing, solving problems that impact a lot of people, and that happens at scale inside of a technology company. So for me, I've already hit the lottery when it comes to my career, and it's amazing that it's just the beginning. So I think people can remind themselves that they too are capable if they find their why, if they can really reach out to people that work in a sector that they're passionate about. And I can't stress enough the genuineness that it has to be. I see a lot of networking that is just sort of like, I'm going to spam everyone until someone replies. That's tough because then, someone might reply that you just reached out to that you weren't really genuinely, interested in. And then you get stuck doing something that you don't want to do. And I think that's the problem for a lot of people. They're stuck doing something that they don't want to do. So finding things that you're passionate about, everything else sort of people want to help you and everything else falls into place. So yeah, that's my advice.
So thank you so much for your time, Jerome. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your journey, your advice, and your experience with us.
Appreciate you for having me on, Felix.